Hey everybody, this is Aya, and I would like to thank you for joining me on my course for the power of Camera Raw. Now for those of you who don't know what Camera Raw is, here's the breakdown. Adobe Camera Raw is a software within a software which allows you to mess with your camera's RAW files. Now, why would you shoot with RAW files? If you're serious about your photography, you want to shoot RAW. RAW files allow for a greater and wider range of editing. Normally your camera, straight out the box, will shoot in JPEG. JPEG is standard image format, everybody knows this. But with Camera Raw, it really allows you to pull your highlights and pull your darks, which will otherwise be too blown out in your JPEGs, or your blacks will be too crushed to really do anything with. So even though your Camera Raw files are larger, the data that they hold is significantly more. Now for us Canon users, those will be our native CR2 files. But Adobe Camera Raw has the compatibility to work with a wide range of RAW files from Olympus, Panasonic, Sony, Nikon, whatever you use. So with that being said, let's get into it. So what I'm gonna show you guys today is this image right here. And we're gonna take this image to being this image here. So from this to this. And we're gonna do this all with just some Camera Raw editing and some layer masking. All right, let's get into it. As you can see here, I've kind of already set it out so you guys can see the layout here of how I kind of have it done already. So let's do this and put this in a nice, neat little folder. And close that out. Boom, there's our basic photo. Now, generally, when I do photos, especially for cars and I'm in dark areas like this, as you can see here, I have shot them in several different exposures. I do this simply because if I need to make an HDR image, I can. All right. So this is our base image imported right in from Lightroom. Let's make a new layer and we're gonna go straight to Filter, Camera Raw. I always make a new layer just so I have my base file to always work from. If I ever mess up, I have something to go back to. All right, this would be your Camera Raw window. Now, like I said earlier, this is built into Photoshop, as you can see. Our exposure sliders, contrast, highlight, shadows, etc., etc. Let's first do exposure. Now what I'm doing here is I'm judging my exposure based on my foreground. Because when I finish this image, there's two things I want my audience to focus on. This car here, this Mini, and the Hummer sign. That's why we're gonna do this in layers. All right. Mess with the contrast a little bit. I'm gonna kind of boost it up. Yeah, I like it boosted just a little bit because I like what it does with this area here. I'm gonna drop my highlights down, not way down because you see how dull it looks. So I'm gonna kind of bring it up a little bit just so I have some of that fill from the outside and these lights up here right back in this area as well as up in here. Now I'm gonna come back later and I'm gonna do some more with these highlights in another layer. See with these shadows. Let's see what I want to do here. Probably bring them down a little bit. So I'm going to bring up my whites again, really pushing this area back here. Bring up my blacks. Yeah, I'm going to bring up my blacks. I really don't do too much in clarity and texture just yet, but I will boost my clarity just a little bit. Now, sometimes what I do with a lot of my photos, especially my fashion stuff, is where it goes white balance. I always go to auto just to see what it's gonna look like. Now, because there was a big open door over here from the garage, it's really bringing in a lot of that sunlight, and I don't want that. So I'm just gonna go back to as shot. And kind of bring just a little, change the temperature just a little bit. Change the tint a little bit so I have a little bit more magenta. I'm actually gonna mess with the tone curves a little bit later. But right now I'm gonna go to detail. And what you can do is you can actually hit the Alt key. And it kind of gives you a little bit more detailed look on what you're looking at. First I'm gonna go to masking. And what I'm gonna do, you can bring it all the way up so you really get your edges, but I kind of want to bring it back just a little bit so I can get more of those edges. There we go. Yes. Bring up my amount a little bit more. Kind of see the difference when messing with Alt and the radius a little bit. So what I want to do is probably right here. Yeah, that looks good. Detail, bring that up. And detail you really can't see. So probably bring it right about there. All right, and this will be my base image for editing. Boom, already see a major difference. So before and after, and that was just with one layer. So now we're gonna go back in. Let's see, actually let's make that base, and we're gonna turn this to our highlight layer. We're gonna go back into Camera Raw. Filter, there we go. Camera Raw. Now we're working with the new layer that we just created. Now I'm gonna mess with my highlights. I'm gonna really pull up these highlights because I want this shine here, the headlights and here, and on all the chrome, these whites here. This is what I want for my highlights. So yeah, just give me a little bit more exposure. See what the contrast does. Ooh, I like that. Bring down the whites just a little bit. Boom. Now I use Control J, like I said before, to create a new layer. Do a layer mask. Make sure at 100%. And I'm using my brackets to increase or decrease the size of my brush. You can also use Alt, right click, and you can also adjust the size and hardness of your brush that way. Just depends whatever your flow is. Now, Control I to invert that layer. So now everything's gone because the mask is here. And I'm just gonna zoom in and kind of just paint in my highlights. You can also do it the opposite way where you can paint them out and then just invert the layer afterwards. Just depends on how you're feeling, I guess. Let's go ahead and paint all this in. Yeah. Now I'm not gonna leave it at 100%. Usually when I do this, I'll drop it down to like 50, or I'll play with the opacity a little bit, just to make it feel a little bit more real, a little bit more natural. Yeah. Let's drop this to 50, see what that looks like. Let's bring that up to 70. I like that. Yeah, 70. All right, so now we have our highlight layer. We're gonna select both, create new layers, we'll duplicate layers, I should say. Merge them. Now, what I wanna do is I wanna bring out these dark colors in the bike and a little bit of this blue in the mini here. Let's just call this foreground color, bike / mini. Reopen Camera Raw on the new layer we just created. A little bit of, yeah, just like that. Increase our exposure for it. Increase our contrast. Gonna really boost the vibrance too. Like look how rich that blue is. And then you get the reflection from the Hummer sign up there. I love that. Let's see, should we? No, let's drop the saturation just a tad bit. And let's bring our tint over. That's beautiful. And I love the reflection right here on the concrete as well. I'm actually gonna play with that a little bit later. And just like in the last layer, we inverted it. And then we're gonna paint everything right back in. Got a little bit on the chrome, let's get that off. Yeah, just like that, beautiful. Look at that. You cannot tell me that doesn't look good. Bring that back in. And actually what I wanna do, let's get rid of that. I'm gonna Control Z that. And we're gonna bring this here to 50%. I'm gonna change my brush opacity to 50. I don't want this as bright as the Mini. Yeah, that's better. So I want that Mini and the Hummer sign to really push forward. I'm going to jump back to 100%. I actually have a gamer mouse, so I could just hit the buttons on the side. But I just brought it back to 100%. And I found out if you do have like the Razer mouse like I have, the buttons, the number buttons on the side could actually affect your opacity numbers, which is a great thing. Beautiful. We're gonna kind of come in here. Whoops, hit X to switch from black to white. If you aren't familiar, X swaps, your X hotkey swaps these two colors over here. And just nicely paint that back in. See, now we have this Mini really popping out of the image. And now, I kind of want to take care of this glare over here. I really don't like that. I feel it's very distracting. So what we're gonna do, name this door glare. We're gonna bring this down. Now keep in mind, I'm doing all of this using only the Camera Raw filter. And you can technically do all of this within Camera Raw. So if you hit the K key, it gives you this option here. So let me give that a little bit of boost in exposure. So you can see it gives it here, enter, and then boom. You hit this again, and then you can create another layer. Enter, and another layer. So technically, everything we're doing, you could do specifically just in the Camera Raw filter, but I personally prefer to do it in layers in the actual Photoshop itself. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna drop these highlights even more. I really wanna get rid of that. Contrast. That's way too blown out, but make it work. Boom. And then, remember, we're just gonna paint that right back in. Boom. Good. Let's see, drop that down to 60%. That looks a lot better. That looks a lot better, actually. Now, What I want to do now is work on this. Now what I want to do is I want to work here on this Hummer sign. So I'm going to select everything, duplicate layers, merge them. Go back into Camera Raw. All right, now this is where we're gonna get to play with our tone curves, our HSL sliders. Let's drop down the exposure, because we really want this red to pop. So increase our vibrance, our saturation. I'm actually going to, I'm gonna boost the clarity. Drop the shadows. Drop the highlights just a little bit. Definitely drop our whites. Good. See how rich that red is? So highlights. Let's get a few, bring some of those highlights back. There we go. Right there. Shadows, good. Let's see. Let's go over here. Let's bring some of that red. Yes, that's what we want. We want this rich red color here. Too much magenta. Perfect. And we're gonna come back again to really do this area back here too. Create our layer. Now, you could paint this back in. I'm gonna do this a little simple. I'm gonna use my magic wand tool. Just kind of click in here. Zoom in. Really get these. All right, now we're gonna paint this right in. Let's increase our brush size. Good. Boom. Look at that. You got a little bit of this here. Kind of go in here and knock out these edges a little bit. All right, now that we've gotten all of our stuff edged off, we can go on to the next step. And I want to tackle this wood back here. It's pretty bright. I know I said earlier I wanted to leave some of the light, and I do, but I kind of want to bring more of the details out back here. So let's duplicate these layers again. All right, Camera Raw. Drop these highlights. Perfect. Actually, we're gonna drop them pretty far down. Bring the contrast up, bring the clarity up, bring the vibrance up. Let's go over to tone curves. Here we go. Our lights. Highlights really aren't doing too much. Let's drop the darks just a hair. And that's perfect. That is perfect. I'm just gonna paint that back in. One of the things I really love about shooting at this place is it's different textures, it's different colors. The guy that owns this is a big collector of European cars. Has one of the best collections that I've come across of in my area. I want to make sure you kind of get in through these windows too. Now that looks good. I enjoy that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to invert this real quick just so I can see what these other colors look like. And actually what I want to do is I want to tackle this sign here. Get more of this yellow. Good. Not so much there. And actually I kind of want to get rid of this yellow up here. So I don't like that yellow. Let's merge these layers again. Let's try to get rid of that yellow up there. Let's see, how will we get rid of that yellow? We can just drop our vibrance, our saturation, and now we have a black and white image, which looks pretty badass as is. I might get this printed in black and white. I go right up here. I'm gonna take out this yellow because that isn't supposed to be yellow. That BMW sign is supposed to be white anyway. And this sign, I think this sign is yellow by default. Let's check that. Let's see what it looks like white. Yeah, I prefer that white. Or yellow. I'll leave it yellow. So, we're almost done with this image. What I need to do is I need to bring these blacks out here. I really need to bring these blacks out. So we're gonna create one more layer. Bring up Camera Raw again. I'm just gonna increase our shadows. You see how by increasing your shadows, it really pulls out that detail that looks like it normally would have been lost here. This is what I was talking about earlier when I mentioned shooting JPEG versus RAW. Generally shooting JPEG, you wouldn't be able to bring this much detail back. Like you'd probably only get to maybe like right here. We're gonna just bring that all the way up. And you see what it does here. It really brings out a lot of these details down in here and up in here, which is what we want, and over in here. So invert that, and let's paint this in. Alright, now that we've got our shadows brightened up, we're actually going to kill a lot of them. Because it's too much. Let's see, 30%. 30% looks good. So now we have our focus being drawn pretty much right here to the Mini and to the Hummer. And now we're just gonna go ahead and save this image. I already had it saved once, so I'm gonna save it again because I like this version better. So I'm gonna go ahead and save this again. It's gonna take a little bit of time, but since I brought it in right from Lightroom, what's gonna happen is it's gonna pop in right here. And one thing I love about editing, well, importing your images from Lightroom directly into Photoshop is it jumps right back. Like once you save it, it pops right back and creates a stack for you, and it's fantastic. And now that it's done saving, let's go back here. 1 of 2, 2 of 2. Bam, here's our image. Let's swap this over. So here's our image right here. So thank you for joining me. This is the power of Camera Raw. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope it was informative. Please click like, subscribe, comment. I would like to know what else you guys would like to see and how I can help you in your retouching. With that being said, have a good one. Peace.